Happy holidays, everyone. I hope that you are all having a happy holidays and are able to end off 2024 mercifully in a way that makes you feel at least a little bit optimistic for the future. I, at the very least, despite not being a festive person, am feeling pretty good because recently I got to play this masterful game called 1000xRESIST. It's an indie game, super niche. I made a whole video about it just to let you know. Please check that out because this video is going to have spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers and you want to know about this awesome narrative heavy game, kind of like a 13 Sentinels times Nier Automata times Signalis vibe, then you should go watch that video instead because it's going to be like a life-changing experience if you do end up playing the game. It is sincerely one of the best narratives I've ever experienced in my life, let alone in 2024, let alone in a video game. That game is so good that I don't feel satiated just leaving it at that. I need to talk about spoilers. I need to get into the nitty gritty, and it's not going to be analytical. You're not going to learn too many things that are new if you have beaten the game. This is just kind of a casual spoiler discussion, except it's just me talking to myself, and hopefully at least some of you who are listening. Believe it or not, I already want to replay it, so I want to do my own sort of analysis during that playthrough, just see what things I can pick up on that I didn't pick up on the first time. That's one of the most satisfying parts about playing a narrative-driven game. But I wanted to provide also my sincere first-time playthrough reaction, my impressions, and just sort of how it feels after all these weeks, almost a month to this day. I still remember that game so vividly. It's one of those games that's paced so freaking well, and there's so many memorable parts. It just feels like every other moment is a moment that in any other game would be the highlight. It's one of those games where even when you beat it, you're going to have a strong impression of it, but the more you think about it, the more you especially talk about it, the more you're going to appreciate that game. But enough of that, let us finally move on to Chapter 1, or Chapter Redacted is what technically starts the game, but we're going to lump that together here. Just a lot of confusion, a lot of things happening, a lot of phrases thrown out with no context, the setting and all the characters are weird, the way of life is weird. It starts out immediately with Iris, the main antagonist, being killed. And it kind of puts you in a weird spot. What a game does with its villains is that, or really any story, typically how it goes is you see the villain presented to you in a villainous way. They want you to hate that villain immediately because they're the villain, right? And then later on, that's when you figure out how complex they actually are, and the more sympathetic side of them, the more empathetic side of them. Just thought it was so fascinating that this game, right off the bat, really just starts out in the best way to separate itself from other narratives in video games. You're going to feel bad from them from the very beginning. We're going to make you question how you feel. We're going to make you just kind of feel at odds with your own emotions regarding this character right off the bat. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I do want to talk about when you first enter the main hub. You talk to Noah, who gives you, it's not something that's so openly biased towards that society, but it feels realistic. It feels grounded, and that kind of sums up her character the whole way through. I'll talk more about that later, but Noah, I think, is one of the strongest characters in the whole game. One of the quotes that is so important to the game as a whole that she says is, "There is no feeling worth being incinerated over." And now that's such a loaded statement by itself, because you're like, incinerated over? Is that literal, or is she being poetic? That by itself gives you some questions. But it also makes you feel a little different. It makes you feel a little weird about how the society feels. Is this just truly a dystopia? Is this her opinion? I'll talk about Noah more, but I just thought that even though it felt dystopian, it kind of just frames the more realistic parts of this narrative. Before you even get to the school, before you even get to the slice of life, that quote right there is already setting you up for the kind of questions you're going to be asking yourself and about real life in a really cool way, a really subtle way as well. And now on to the school, where this is still one of my favorite parts of the game. You didn't really know what you were getting yourself into. There's a lot of curiosity, a lot of intrigue of just exploring this school of this all-mother that you just saw being murdered. Just coming at it from just an interesting perspective while also just still being simple, still being grounded compared to a lot of other stuff that's happening in the game. And plus just the mechanic of switching between the two timelines in the other communions later on. It gets really crazy with like what points in the timeline you're skipping between. But this one, nothing crazy going on, just some nice little puzzles here and there. And this school, I tell you, there's some weird-ass kids in the school. Some strange, peculiar people. They're not that important, but definitely, you definitely remember them. I mean, how can you not remember the pigeon girl? And then, like, the little drama going on with the play, and then there's the guy in the class who's in detention, actually. He starts rapping, and it, like, goes on for a while. I was shocked. I'm like, they actually, wow. They went out of their way to write this long rap. That's pretty funny. And I also want to mention, speaking of children, Secretary. Their name is Secretary. Their voice acting immediately kind of threw me off. It's like an actual kid doing the voice acting. And what I didn't learn until very recently, like a few days ago, you know, this game took several years to develop. And so they did the pre-time skip voice acting early on in development. 2 or 3 years later, they brought them back after they hit puberty and their voice changed to voice act the post-time skip. And that adds so much immersion. I didn't even really think about it. That's how well it works, and just how brilliant of a choice that was. Like, that's like, you don't really see that in a lot of games. I mean, I've never really heard that at all, to be quite frank. Like, usually when you hear about a child actor returning for a role, it's because, well, that initial role is done. Like, that's already a complete product, right? But this one, like, mid-development, they're like, wait, hold on. Wouldn't it be really cool? That's just, like, one of those details that most people, even if they recognize the voice actor, they might just think, oh, it's a child who's, like, good at their job. Most people are not going to expect that. And I love those kind of details. No matter what area of the game it is, when the creators put in these details that they know for a fact 99% of players are not going to have the slightest clue about those details, but just the fact that they're there adds so much to the game. In this case, so much immersion. Now, of course, the main storyline revolving around the school is between Iris and Xiao. Xiao is a character that I very quickly got invested in. It helps that I'm also an Asian from an immigrant family. So yeah, that just early on, I was like, oh wow, I did not expect that I would relate to this game so fast, especially, you know, with all the crazy shit happening. This is where the kind of complex feelings around Iris begin, if they hadn't already begun, because she is an asshole. Like, she's not the nicest person to Xiao, and you feel bad for Xiao because Iris is her only friend. So you want Iris to be a good friend. But at the same time, Iris is going through a lot of stuff by herself. You know, she has her own life, she has her own problems, so to have this other character rely so much on them and always trying to get in their business, yeah, I totally can see why Iris would be frustrated. Also the fact that they're both kids, right? So I really cared about Xiao, and I wanted her to have a good life and all that, but I couldn't really blame Iris, you know, I totally get it. But then they start hinting at the night of the dance. I think they just call it a dance. Maybe it's the night of the prom. Whatever it is. It really builds towards that night. And what I actually appreciated in hindsight, I was confused in the moment, but in hindsight, they don't reveal what happens. It's just kind of implied, or it's one of those things where it doesn't really matter. You just know Iris hurt Xiao in some way. That scene when you're walking into the prom venue, one of the most beautiful visuals in the entire game. It's just so, it's not just pretty, it's just so whimsical, I suppose. This is also the first time you see the occupants, who are horrifying. I really thought, you know, I'm thinking about like the typical video game story. I really thought that maybe they'd be the main antagonists and that we'd find some way to defeat them. But no, they truly are just like this this third party who, at least in the present timeline, is just kind of chilling. They're just kind of observing. It's not like they never interact with, the people that we know in this society, but everything, all that destruction in the past is behind us for the most part. Now we're going to quickly transition from the end of Chapter 1 to the beginning of Chapter 2, because then you have Fixer. At the beginning of the game, they had their farewells, Watcher and Fixer. You could tell they were best friends, but both of them, they weren't revealing their emotions too much to each other. What ends up happening is that she comes back, supposedly, in the communion to confront Watcher and tell her about the truth about the society and the All-Mother and how just effed up everything is. Like, how can you say this is a good person? And Watcher does bring up some good points. Yeah, this is like so long ago. She was a kid back then. But again, this is one of those moments. This game is full of these moments. This is one of those moments where I was just kind of going back and forth, this time in terms of the main protagonist, Watcher. Because, yeah, I'm like, okay, no, I get why you feel this way. You are bringing up a few good points. But, this is your best friend, Fixer. Like, would she really lie to you? Yeah, you're inclined to believe in Fixer, but you're also inclined to believe in your main character. I thought, okay, maybe that would be resolved later on. Maybe that's going to develop throughout time. Nope! Instead, Chapter 2 hits you with Fixer being incinerated. Yes, they did mean that literally. She's gone. They make a whole announcement about it. And not only that, they show these drawings in the sky, which was really weird. Iris's drawings depicting what happens to Fixer. A tonal dissonance in a really good way. It just kind of like makes the society feel more effed up. That they're portraying this horrible murder with children's drawings. Of course, to them, they don't see it that way. Because to them, that's just how the All-Mother does it. Chapter 2 is one of my favorite chapters as well. I mean, I might say this about most of the chapters in the game, so it just might be a meaningless statement. But Chapter 2 stands out to me because that's where you get to the slice of life at home, Iris's family life, and you got Bang with you. Now, Bang is a character I also really enjoyed. I'll also talk about them later on, but I will admit, like, at first, I was like, do I really want those kind of jokes from her at this moment? But seeing how her character develops throughout the whole storyline, I thought that, no, it made a lot of sense. But yeah, the whole Iris family storyline, my favorite part of the game, just straight up. It's such an integral part of the game. It is just so core to the game's identity. And yes, I'm a little biased because, again, I am Asian. I do come from an immigrant family. Just to let you know, in case you are not either of those things, very well portrayed, very well done, accurate portrayal. They hit the nail on the head, or however that phrase goes. Because even, I think about just the parents by themselves. Not even the tension, not even the complex relationships they have with their daughter. Just the parents, just that dynamic. You got the one parent who's really strict, wet blankets, and just overall kind of a bummer. And then you have the other parent. They're not like so open and liberal, but they're more kind of playful with their child. It's kind of like opposites attract, kind of the angel and devil on your shoulder, if you will. Yeah, I've seen that dynamic so many times. I've had many Asian friends throughout my lifetime, but especially around that age range that Iris is in. Not to sound like a broken record, but I do want to leave more of my thoughts for later. And there's so much I could say about Iris and her family. But the one thing that I want to point out that I was horrified by, because I honestly forgot, maybe I'm too innocent or naive or whatever. I genuinely forgot that this was possible. Iris microwaved her hamster and it exploded. Horrified. And you don't see it happening. You see the parents reacting to it and how the mom is just like, what the this is why we should be more strict on her, because like now she's doing these crazy things. Just kind of shows that Iris, yeah, she's going through a lot. And so it's all the more believable that when the people, the number 5 people, whatever they're called, try to take her from her home, it's believable that Iris is like, yeah, fuck it. Why not? Chapter 3 is perhaps the most visually striking, the most impressive presentation in this game. It's just such a joy to just walk through. You know, like you're not even really doing anything that much, no puzzles to solve, right? You're just kind of going through it, but the story is presented to you. I think it is really just the pinnacle, the quintessential example of what I'm talking about when I say that this game just makes sure to present the story in such interesting and creative ways. It does not rest on its laurels. It knows that, hey, maybe you're thinking this is a walking simulator, maybe you're just thinking, oh, there's like too much dialogue to read, but by doing it, by presenting it in these ways, there's always something fresh to hold on to, something always compelling around the corner, which is just true. So you want to make sure your game feels that way, even just visually. But yeah, this is where we learn some heavy stuff. If microwaving a hamster was not enough to make you feel horrified, a lot goes down here, where you basically experience how Iris created the whole society. She made all these clones with certain roles, and you see the first Watcher, who, man, why they gotta do that to the first Watcher? I mean, I get it. The role of Watcher, not the most exciting role, not a role that on paper you should be proud about, and how that ties into the overall story, just chef's kiss. But yeah, just on paper, not too surprising that they would get bullied like that. They're making her play hide and seek because she's really good at seeing things. She's really good at watching. And then it's just like, you hate to see it. You do not want to see it. Even if it's the past Watcher, you still feel kind of offended because you're also a Watcher. And that sort of neglect and humiliation leads her, inspires her to want to impress the All-Mother with the clone of Zhao. And, holy shit. Talk about a dark moment where Iris just murders a clone of Zhao right before all her sisters' eyes. And what I love about that scene too was that the sisters like all came together to defend Watcher. I thought that was really touching. Not the most ideal situation, the most ideal family, but they are there for you when something especially terrible like this happens. That becomes motivation for the way the society becomes. Iris is already in control, but especially after that, that is just so twisted. Also, shout out to Healer, because Healer, when you first meet her, is just so antagonistic. It's like, why are you like this? But then you start to realize, well, you even see Healer like getting uncomfortable with seeing all these memories. Like, she's way more affected by this than Watcher herself. And so, when she confronts Watcher at the end, it makes a lot more sense. You're like siding with her at this point. Like, yeah, Watcher, isn't this all messed up? Like, is this not okay? And I like that a lot in general, because I just kind of roll my eyes a little bit when I see a story where the main protagonist is like the only reason why the story is progressing. Maybe not literally the only reason, but, you know, they're the one who starts the revolution. Like, nobody else ever thought to have this sort of bravery. Like, no. Watcher is not the first of her kinds. She's not the first one with these ideas. In fact, the other sisters have to tell her. They have to show her. Noah then does the same thing in Chapter 4. If all that wasn't bad, it gets worse because the occupants just take down their society, take it down a little bit of a peg. And this is another interesting development for the player, because now it's like, okay, maybe the occupants are the real antagonists, or like, what's going on here? But really the main point is that you're seeing how down everybody is, and how, like, all these clones, you feel for them like they are real. Like, they're real people, they're real losses. But you just know, well, the wheel's just gonna keep turning. Just gonna keep going the way it's going. Now, admittedly, Chapter 4 is my least favorite chapter. That's the only chapter in the game where I felt like, okay, like, we can speed things up a little bit. You know, because you have to, like, sort of re-experience certain characters and dialogue. It's cool in a way because you're looking at it with a fresh perspective. But it is a little repetitive. It is slower paced than other chapters. So, yeah, this is definitely my least favorite chapter in the game. I don't want to downplay the chapter, though, because it is very integral in showing you more of who the occupants are, why Iris related to them, and the fact that Secretary is an occupant. And that's finally the breaking point. You know, like everything's been building up for Watcher. The whole cause that she's been told about why the society is doing what they do, what they're fighting for, the whole time, no, it turns out that it's all a lie, and our supposed enemy is our companion, who's been helping us and guiding us through all these memories. And Watcher does not take it well, which, considering this whole society is based on Iris, not surprised, in hindsight at least. It was surprising in the moment, but in hindsight, yeah, I totally get why Watcher had that reaction. Just completely obliterated that poor sweet child's voice actor in Secretary. What I will say about Noer, though, is that it was an interesting contrast from Healer, because Healer was really affected by everything. But Noer, it's like part of why she's so interesting. She wants to show you all this. She does acknowledge it's messed up, but she doesn't really side with you at the end. In fact, she's kind of like, hey, relax. It's like the opposite. Now Watcher's the one who's being too passionate and too questioning of things. Noer's kind of like almost gaslighting you in a way. You could kind of deduce why that is the more you learn about her. That's the thing I love about the roles too, the functions rather. They really do explain like why their personality is the way they are. Because Healer, she's had to heal so many bodies and experiment on so many bodies that, yeah, all this kind of gruesome stuff or things that would remind her of it, she's going to have a little bit more of a displeasurable reaction to it than others. Whereas Noer, she's going to look at someone like Watcher, who's seeing this all for the first time and having this extreme reaction. She's going to look down on her. At least that's how it feels when you first see it. Chapter 5 is the shortest chapter in the game. Not much to say because of that, because this is where Watcher finally kills Iris. And it turns out that Principal was the first all along. And they've been stringing you along. They've been making you believe. They wanted you to believe in what you believe, which is the truth, but also they make you feel it so strongly that you were pushed into killing Iris. Just yet another instance of you're just questioning what we're doing. We're questioning our motives. Like, did we want to kill Iris? Seeing how we got played. But then we didn't really get played because we needed to see that. You know, like, it's just kind of, you're going back and forth when you think about it more. It's like, it was helpful. It was a good thing. Now, it does make you believe that Watcher escapes, but we don't really know. Because out of nowhere, there's a time skip. Secretary hits puberty. And now we get to this whole new setting, new protagonists, starting off Chapter 6 with even more questions than we had at the beginning of Chapter 1. The new protagonist is like one of the only familiar things, because you look at them, they don't look exactly like the Watcher we just played as, but there is a resemblance. And later you do find out that, yeah, they're like another clone, a descendant, if you will, compared to the other chapters. Not for a normal game, but compared to the other chapters, it does feel like a little bit slower, because there is just so much you have to absorb. Like, the setting is new, and then you do end up going back to the main hub, which is very different from when you last visited it. So it's like mostly a chapter about discovering what changed. I should also say I do like the new protagonist, who we eventually call Blue. Blue is like kind of like Watcher, but like a little more edgy, a little more, I don't know, he's got a little bit more of a bite to them, you know? I don't know how to describe it, but whatever the hell's happening, you're going to be able to unravel it just because of the confidence and also the no F's given. So yeah, it turns out that the setting that you wake up in is the underground portion of the main hub. Just kind of this place where they put all the misfits in, all the people they want to keep a closer eye on. You see, for the first time, these red soldiers, I forget their actual name, but these red soldiers who are just really assholes. You never saw them before. And then you even see that one of the leaders is Noer. And she's the one who takes down Bartender, who is also another sort of familiarity that you can hold on to, at least for a moment. And so it just brings up a lot of questions, like, okay, is this the same Noer that I knew? Was everything up until now even productive? Because it just seems like, are things worse without Iris? Like, what's going on here? As cool as the underground is, I do think it gets more interesting when you go back to the main hub, because then it's a lot more of a compare and contrast. Now they have Zhaos just lying around. You know, Iris banned Zhaos. Iris was not a fan. But now I guess the principal, she's a big fan. I mean, you know, she was the one who presented the first Zhao clone. So, yeah, it's just immediately you can see that the culture has substantially changed. And ironically, it's the Zhaos who help you rebel. This whole mayhem during the play that they routinely show the society a very romanticized version of Iris's death. Is this happening because Principal is just that much of a gaslighter? Or does she still have those lingering feelings for Iris? Because she didn't want to kill Iris herself. It's just so nuanced there about like what Principal's true intentions are. Because even like during the death scene that they're acting out, the Principal makes the extras say things that aren't even in the script just to appease herself, just to feel like she's still getting Iris's validation, you know? It's twisted in another way. It's not violence like how Iris was at certain points, but it was just kind of like mentally deranged in a way. Like what is happening in this girl's mind right now? Then you get the very satisfying reveal that most of the sisters have banded together to help you out. Fixer's also back. She never died. That was also another one of Principal's little schemes in there to fool you, to manipulate you into making that choice to kill Iris. You get flashbacks just a little bit. You're not getting like too much in terms of the context. But yeah, that is the Umbrella Revolution, I think it's called. The Umbrella Revolution from Hong Kong. It just feels like a little bit surreal. I don't know. I don't play that many games that have that, where it's like, yeah, remember how crazy that was? And also how it's still affecting not just China, but just the whole world. Being put in that moment, even without context, it just really made that escape sequence feel all the more tense. Here we go. I've been waiting for this the whole video. This chapter right here should go down in history as one of the best chapters in gaming. If you are a Xenoblade fan, which there's a decent chance because I'm known for Xenoblade content, if you couldn't notice, this is basically the Chapter 5 moments. This is that sequence of events. This is that hour of your life that you're going to remember forever. You're going to remember where you were, how you felt, what time of day it was when it happened for you. This is one of those moments in time that is just going to live in your head forever, live in your heart. Chapter 7 in this game is insane. And I might as well start off with Noer, because I've been teasing it the whole time. Noer is the one who is leading this torture sequence. Not Blue. Blue's the one's having these visions, having these memories come back. The Watcher we knew, who we thought escaped, potentially. I forgot to mention the statue of her in the main hub that you can see. That's just horrifying. And Noer's the one who really shows her true colors. Every other scene, you're changing your mind about her. At least I was. I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. Noer's actually on our side. She's gonna help us get out of here. Oh, no, wait, no, she sold out. Oh, no, wait. She was actually doing this. No, oh, she sold out. Oh, no, we're back. We're so back. Oh, you know, just, it goes back and forth. It's so good. Just giving you hope constantly and then just taking it away. But every time you get that hope, it never feels like, oh, I don't believe this. I'm over this. No, it feels so effective every time. It's so good at just dangling that carrot. Is Noer going to help us or not? Is Watcher going to be saved? Because it is a brutal sequence. It goes on for at least a year. It's already so impactful to see the original protagonist being treated like this. They're so defiant. Watcher is so defiant at the very beginning, but then just seeing how much she loses it over the course of time is just so sad. But Noer, I think she's such an important part of like why this whole sequence works the way it does. You know, it might sound like selfish or like I'm insulting people, but I really mean this in a genuine way. Like, this is just a fact of life. Noer reflects a lot of people. Like she said at the beginning of the game, there is no feeling worth being incinerated over. That quote at the very beginning of the game just has so many implications for the whole narrative, but especially her actions, because she's a character that does want to help you. She does have morals. She does know what is right. Ideally, she would love to do what is right. But she's also realistic. She knows that if she does something out there, she's going to get herself killed. And it's not in a selfish way of like, oh, I don't want to die, I'm scared to die, or anything like that. It's more so like, okay, but if I end up dying, then what was this all for? Which is going to connect to something very soon. But to her, she's like, if I end up dying, what was this all for? I need to stay alive. I need to kind of blend in. I need to go with the status quo for now in order to achieve what ideally would be right for the society. And you see that so much. That's why it feels like that hope is being given and then taken away. It's because it's like, no, you can tell that Healer wants to help. She even gets frustrated with Watcher, like, Watcher, if you just did this thing, it'd be easier for both of us. You can tell the good is inside her. It's not like this new society has corrupted her. It's not like she's always been bad. No, you can tell she wants to help. But she's just that character who, for better or worse, is very realistic. Where she knows, hey, look, I'm not going to romanticize life. Sometimes you just got to do shit you don't want to do. Sometimes you got to blend in. Sometimes you got to kneel over for society. Man, she is such a fantastic character. Because it's such a real... Oh, sorry. Sorry, I knew I was going to get emotional during this video. It just perfectly contrasts from the visions that Blue and Watcher have of Iris's parents, who went through the... I'm so sorry. Who went through the Umbrella Revolution. The whole time, you know, you're seeing them have to deal with the fact that the world that they knew, it's basically ended. Humanity and society has crumbled. It's just them. It's just them. And without Iris. They can't even have that. They can't even have their daughter returning to them as she promised. Life is basically no more. And so they end up partying, they end up doing all these things that are supposed to be fun, but it all comes back to the feeling that the mom has. The mom specifically, this is one of my favorite parts of the game. This is like top 2 moments. They're both drunk at this point, so the feelings are coming out. The mom is venting to the father. You know, they met during that revolution. I mean, they fought for what they believed in. And, you know, if you know history, it did not turn out that great. It was not like this happy thing where they knew that they fought for justice and life turned around for the better. The government just came down harder on them. And so the mom says, basically, what was the point of that? What were we fighting for? Everything, it was all for nothing. Like I said with Nowhere, like, what's the point of like actively fighting for something if like it's not even gonna turn out well? If it's not even gonna, just what's the point? Nowhere's perspective is real. I'm not saying it's unreasonable. I'm not saying if you think that you're wrong. Because now the mom is raising that question. Like, what's the point? Why did we fight for that? This is like the strongest message of the game I came away with. Like this right here. Because I feel like it's so relevant. Just always, but especially recently. And especially with my change in identity. It feels overwhelming sometimes to believe in certain things. But the dad tells her, like, no, there was a point to fighting for what we did. Because even if we didn't succeed, at least succeed the way that we thought we would, we're still letting the world know it wasn't always like this. We're letting the world know that this is not what the people wanted. If we didn't speak up, we would just know history as like society has always been like this and the people never cared. The people were just content. They were just complacent. I don't know. It just really gave me a perspective. I think it's something that a lot of people need to hear. Let's just put it that way. I think it's something that a lot of people need to hear because it's so easy to think that like what you do doesn't matter. There's a lot of protests and these revolutions. A recent example is in South Korea, the protest against the president. That would not happen if it wasn't for the past. If people could not look at the past and say to themselves, regardless of what happened, people fought for what they believed in. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but they had the strength to do that. If you can't show the future generation that, that's just not ideal, to say the least. First time I actually cried during the game was actually during the video that he sends, at least he records to Iris, where he admits that, like, he didn't really want to start a family like that originally. Like, it was hard to love Iris because that's not what he initially wanted. But then, I believe he says, yeah, it was hard at first, but then it became the only thing that I ever knew how to do. The dad is, suffice to say, the dad is one of the absolute best, if not the best character in the whole thing. Like, he just has amazing moments, and he talks about, like, even with the revolution and knowing that they needed to escape from Hong Kong. Despite knowing that, he misses it. He misses Hong Kong. He misses his home. That's very real. Like, I'm Cambodian. There was a genocide happening at a certain point not too long ago around those parts. But still, you know, I'll still have relatives of mine kind of like reminisce, like, oh yeah, back in the day when I was in Cambodia. It's like so real, and it's just it just really shows the complex nature of people. But going back to what the dad said about why it's important, complements what Watcher's going through and what will become of her. Because it feels like what she did was for nothing, because now she's being tortured for an hour of the game. And the society looks like it's worse. It's basically just a mirror of the Umbrella Revolution, where she went through all that, and like, you could ask for what? What was the point? But the point, as we find out, it creates the people who are gonna lead the future to a better place. It ends up with Blue and the sisters and Fixer. It's just such a masterfully written chapter. I think this chapter should be preserved in a museum. Just incredible. And throughout all that pain and suffering, by the way, it ends with this real life video in first person driving through Hong Kong, I assume. Just a much needed quiet moment to really ground ourselves after what we went through. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say. Just the absolute peak of the game. My favorite hour of 2024. One of my favorite hours of any game I played, for sure. And then it sucks even more. There's more suffering. There's more tragedy. Because in Chapter 8, you are initially led to believe Watcher was broken free, and now you're Blue, you're waking up, we're assembling the adventures, this is going to be great. Watcher is in a coma, doesn't even get to have a proper reunion with the sisters and Fixer, and she's going to die soon. Just sheer sadness. Because the game dangled this carrot throughout this whole chapter. And then finally it does turn out that Nowhere did help you in the end. It took a long ass time, so you're feeling pretty good. But instead, now you're feeling like crap. As Blue, with these other characters, they don't exactly trust you. Like, they just consider you a terrorist. You know, they still know you're dangerous. They reasonably do not fully trust you. But then there's Watcher, of course. As the dad was saying too, like, it's all about passing it on to the next generation. It's all about inspiring the next generation. I know that's like such a shitty feeling to feel like you can't get the change you want as yourself right now, but just that influence to the next generation, man, that is the most powerful thing. Because now Watcher, unfortunately, succumbing to her injuries, all the torture she went through, but she's able to pass on her memories to Blue, who's gonna succeed her in hopefully ridding the society of its oppression. There's this moment in Iris's bedroom. Watcher's laying on the bed. And I think she said this at this moment. Around this area, at the very least. Even though she's never been here, like, actually, it feels like this is her home. And it feels like their parents were her parents. But it just speaks to, like, what I was saying about the dad as well, where he misses Hong Kong, which was his home that he knows he should not go back to. And she says this line, which admittedly I thought was like kind of cheesy at first, which is like, sometimes you just don't fit in the backpack. Because earlier, you go through Iris's memories in the home because she's packing her bag She's deciding what to carry in order to move on with her life, move on to the future. And now it's about Watcher finally coming to terms with her own death. A very tragic moment in the game, but one that needed to happen to be able to fulfill all of this game's most important themes. Like, if Watcher survived, I'm not saying the themes couldn't have been done well, but her death was really important to really underscoring everything this game stands for. But it is still sad. So now we reach Chapter 9, the penultimate chapter. Probably my second least favorite chapter, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just another chapter where, like, you're building up things and you're also learning more about things that are important to understand, but they're not my favorite things about the game. In this case, it's about the space station, because the whole society is in space. It's just this other kind of escape from planet Earth where things went down and crazy. Learning about the Five and all the people who worked there and just kind of how they were feeling. Like, it kind of... I think the most surprising thing about the Five is how Mimi, the adult woman who was trying to, like, get Iris more comfortable, you know, going along with them, like, she pretty much groomed her. You learn about that a while before, but point is, you're not necessarily cheering for these people. And it kind of goes down how you'd expect, where things aren't going their way, they get impatient, there's a mutiny. Your task is to find the correct person. An easy task, right? You just walk around the space station, you find them. But for some reason, the very first person that you're supposed to find, I just took forever to find them. I don't know why. I cannot explain to you. It did not end up being difficult or hidden. I just couldn't do it. But yeah, this is definitely more of a calm before the storm. Just kind of tying some loose ends before we get to the finale, where you gather up the troops. Everybody has different perspectives, different views, which is going to be important really soon. But they all want to come together, figure out this plan, ultimately communing with the three secretaries in order to show the whole society who Iris really is, why the society is the way it is. At last, we have reached the finale. We can finally talk about the ending of this wild ride. And it's not like the finale itself is all that crazy. They just have an explosion so that they can do the communion. I mean, there's a sequence where you have to, like... I did really poorly with this because, as I stated in my review, I was really bad at navigating the main hub. I actually almost lost. I almost ran out of time. It was very close. That's pretty much the only thing you got to do in terms of the final act of the game. Let's start off with Bang, because Bang gets shot, and I was upset. Because Bang was one of my favorites. I had a soft spot for Bang. Since they're all technically having a communion together, you could say that they're having these conversations in real life. Like, this is actually happening. Bang, not only does she get shot, but she also kills herself in that sequence. Because Bang goes through this interesting arc where she does have that one moment. You see a little bit of her when she's watching the rain in Iris's home. But then, like, after the communion, she jokes about Iris never coming back. She's not taking it nearly as seriously as the other sisters. But then, when the occupants end up killing a lot of their sisters, Bang feels at guilt with that because she's the one who's supposed to defend some people. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm not saying you should feel ashamed. It's just human nature. Some people, they have to see something like actually there in front of them happening for them to finally buy it. The communion, that's all in the past. When it's her own sisters dying, when she's the one who's potentially at fault, that's when things finally start hitting. Post time skip, she's just depressed. She's just having a bad time. She is going through it. To see that unfold for her, to see her so confident, then to lose that confidence, and then just like not be able to handle the reality of the situation. You also have Noah and Principal talking to each other. And Noah says this line, which is going to come back very soon. Like, how is there a future, or how can we move on without forgiveness? Noah just has a lot of meaningful dialogue. But yeah, just a lot of characters reflect. I don't want to go one by one, honestly, because this next thing I know I'm probably going to cry again. So, my favorite scene in the whole game. I alluded to it in the spoiler-free review. My favorite scene in the whole game is Iris's conversation with her mom. Her last conversation. The conversation they never got to have before. Iris apologizes for not returning to the home like she promised. And you know, they have this like fun little banter where the mom is like teasing her, but in a way it's not like her dad teasing her. Like the mom teases her in such a, it's just so true to her character of the strict Asian mom, you know? It's just that kind of playfulness. Like if you have a strict parent but who also like teases you, you know what I mean? So it's just touching just for them to have that sincere conversation. But then when Iris apologizes, she says that like she couldn't stop. The path she took, she couldn't go back. She could only go forward. And then her at this point maybe you would think she'd get mad or maybe even question Iris's decision, like, oh, like what do you mean you couldn't? And then Iris's mom, there's a brief silence. And sorry. Let's just reintroduce it. So Iris says that she could only go forward, and her mom tells her just 2 words. She just says, "Good girl," and that's her final words to Iris. And I just want you to know I'm not crying because this is like such a personal, relatable moment. Because my mom is great. I have a single mom. She's wonderful. She's not like Iris's mom. Just the validation of that, but also how it connects to what the mom went through. Because Iris, she was escaping this toxic life, the home and the school. Whether or not you agree with the life that she went to, she had to keep moving forward. Her mom and dad were escaping the toxic life happening in Hong Kong. Whether or not you agree with that or not, they did it, and they had to keep moving forward. They couldn't let themselves look back. And the dad, let me not forget to mention, the dad ends up committing suicide as well because he couldn't help but reminisce. He couldn't help but miss Hong Kong. He couldn't help but for the mom to like make that connection, to just have that understanding, because it's like the first understanding they have in the game. It's hard to articulate why this hit home for me, because there are some things in life you move on from, and maybe you didn't even mean to. Maybe you didn't even mean to move on. Like Iris says, she didn't mean to ignore her family, but she just couldn't help but keep going. Like she just felt like she was stuck on the road she was on. And both the mom and the dad, for as flawed as they are, right? They just have their huge moments of affirmations. You know, the dad with reminding you of why you should fight for what you believe in and why it's never a waste. How it's always meaningful to someone. You know, the mom despite everything, just proud of her for doing what she thinks was right, just like the mom and dad did. So the ending of the game, the actual ending. I mean, I could say more, but it's just really hard to articulate. It's one of those things. Like sometimes something resonates with you in a way that you can't even really explain out loud. Because I remember when that happened. I remember when she said the word "good girl." I was already like pretty emotional, but I wasn't really close to crying. But when she said that, I just inexplicably just had an outburst of tears. I cried so hard. So I apologize if I'm not making clear as to why I feel this way, but just the fact that I do, and I'm being vulnerable on camera right now, is just more than anything that I could consciously do. It's just the biggest endorsement. So yeah, the actual ending I thought was so cool. I respect them so much. Shout out to the writers of this game, the directors of this game. You go throughout all these little factions of people, and you decide who do you want to carry towards your future. I think many players, including myself, they will have the inclination to save everybody. For a few reasons. Number one, oh, it's a video game. They want me to save everybody to get the good ending. Number two, even if I don't feel the same way about real life situations, I still want to believe that these characters will redeem themselves. Like Noah said, you need to forgive people. At least you need to give them a chance to prove you wrong. And number three, even if you think that they're bad people, doesn't necessarily mean you want them to die. This is a very heavy decision here. It's not just, oh yeah, see ya. No, it's like, they're not there. Just save everybody. Leave everybody's lights on as the game presents it. But if you do that, you get the bad ending immediately. You just get shot in the main hub and you're dead. I thought this was so smart. Not just because it plays on your expectations, but also it's a smart, realistic way of looking at the future. It goes just right well with everything, all the themes that they have been telling you, all the themes they've been building up. I mean, we just said it a few minutes ago. Like, if you're moving forward, you need to move forward. Yes, you can forgive, but forgiveness does not mean that you have to drag all these people along. Like, it's not your responsibility. If you're moving on, you need to move on. And especially when we're talking about a society that's dysfunctional, we're talking about oppression, there's people that you need to leave behind. Not a bad way where, like, oh, some people don't deserve to live. Not like that, but when you're envisioning a future with no oppression, then those are the hard decisions. There has to be sacrifices, basically. There has to be sacrifices. There's always going to be sacrifices when it comes to meaningful change. And in this case, you cannot bring the Red Soldiers. You cannot bring the Red Army, whatever they're called. You can't do that. What do you think they're gonna? You think they're just gonna smile as soon as they see them? Oh yeah, all's forgiven. No, they're still gonna be who they are. You can't necessarily change that. So you have to leave them behind. I don't know if this is gonna be likely, but I personally saved the principal. But this is where the good ending has an interesting little wrinkle to it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying you should save her, you shouldn't. But the fact that, like, that right there is the difference between the two good endings, I think that was really smart, because that's a lot more nuanced than, hey, we should leave behind these people who are clearly all about oppression, who are clearly all about tearing down people who are trying to enact change, just trying to undermine them, belittle them. We cannot condone that. That type of behavior we cannot condone. Such a powerful way to end it. Make you come to terms with the fact that there has to be sacrifices. And the ending itself is also pretty ambiguous, like the final cutscene, where Blue walks out of the ship, she sees the planet Earth, and then she sees the lingering cult followers of Iris. You can debate whether or not if Blue actually sees Iris, whether or not she sees a clone of Iris, because they were talking about how, oh, Iris is going to return, or if she's seeing just like a little vision, like a symbolic vision. And there's a bittersweetness to that. On one hand, Iris and those followers, they're leaving. They're not going to be a problem in the society they're building, which is good. But there's also a little bit of sadness there, because it also shows you that these supporters, they were shown all these memories of who Iris really is, and yet they still follow her. They still idolize her. It really just solidifies the whole message of this game. The whole resisting 1000 times of, like, this is why you need to be proactive and speak up, because, like, those bad people, they're always gonna have their fans, right? So if they're always having their fans who are always speaking up, then what do you think's gonna happen when the good side doesn't have people speaking up, no matter, whether or not it's successful? We're finally at the end. I should really end because whenever I cry, if you couldn't tell, I need them tissues. I need to calm myself down. That was 1000xRESIST. Such a powerful effect on me. It just feels like such a relevant game. And I think it will continue to be relevant. What it means to stand up, what it means to speak up, what it means to resist, what it means to affect history, what it means to succeed, what it means to fail. I truly do. I truly think this is something a lot of people would be better experiencing. It's just one of those games. It's one of those stories that really inspire. It's like everybody who's played it was really inspired by it. I have seen the word of mouth succeed as of late. There's a lot more people playing it, especially since with the end of year, like calling back to what games we missed, what games deserved more recognition. I mean, this game even got the best narrative at the Indie Game Awards. It should have gone at the actual Game Awards, but that's okay. We could take what we could get. I hope you go into this new year learning some lessons from 1000xRESIST. I would tell you to remember it and carry it forward, but this game is so powerful that like it's not really your choice. It's a game that can't help but to inspire, and I love it so much. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I've thought about it every day since I beat it, and every time I do think about it, I love it more. There's plenty of things that I didn't talk about, but I just want to get across why this game means so much to me. So, thank you for watching. I am done. I will no longer cry, but I will wipe my nose a little bit longer. Not on camera anymore, though. Sorry.